Good morning and welcome to the Growth and Thriving Morning Mindset email. I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, the Biker Psychologist, and this morning I'd like to talk to you about your VO2max. Your VO2 what? VO2max. So if you've listened to any of the podcasts or followed any of the content that I put out, you'll know that my approach to thriving combines mental health and aspects of mental health, things like self-compassion, mindfulness, gratitude, growth mindset, healthy relationships. It includes career trajectory and financial well-being, and it includes optimal physical health and nutrition. I don't believe one can truly thrive if any of these systems is lagging. So VO2 max is essentially how we measure the health and athletic capacity of your cardiorespiratory system. The official definition is that VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during hard exertion. So why is this important? Why does it matter? Well, first of all, higher VO2 max will improve athletic ability. But let's say you're not worried about athletic ability, you're just worried about health and well-being. Well, your VO2 max is the single best predictor of all-cause mortality. That means dying from anything. So to give you just an example of how important VO2 max is, we all recognize that smoking is a major health risk. And people who smoke a pack of cigarettes a day have a 40% increased risk of all-cause mortality over people who don't smoke. So that's 40% for smoking. Now, when we look at VO2 max, people who have a low or a poor VO2 max have a 50% risk of all-cause mortality over people with an excellent or elite VO2 max. So this is a bigger risk factor than smoking. Now, to be fair, people who smoke typically also have a poor VO2 max, and those two risk factors compound to create something like a 75 or an 80% risk. But just in and of itself, on a one-to-one comparison, low VO2 max is a higher risk factor, a poorer health indicator than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So that said, how do we improve VO2 max? Well, we improve it with cardiovascular exercise. I will say this over and over again. You will hear me say this a million times over. Cardiovascular exercise, your cardio or your conditioning program, will not make you skinny. Cardio exercise is not the way to get skinny. Whether that means weight loss or fat loss or getting lean, you're never going to burn enough calories unless you're like an ultra marathon runner or a triathlete. You're never going to burn enough calories running or on the stair climber to become thin. I can talk about why that is in future podcasts or future content. It's outside the scope of this little video for today, but just know that even working out in your fat burning zone pertains to using fat as an energy source, but not to burning fat off your body. Burning fat off your body requires a calorie deficit, which is best achieved by some combination of eating a calorie managed protein diet, high protein diet, and building muscle, which will then increase your resting metabolic rate. However, cardiorespiratory exercise is good for your health. It keeps your heart and lungs healthy, which in turn helps with metabolic health. It gives you what's called metabolic flexibility, and that's the ability to use various energy sources effectively when you're working at various intensity levels. It's very, very important for well-being. So research, there's lots of different approaches to improving VO2 max. The research indicates that probably the best and the simplest that I can explain to you is to do a combination of high intensity interval training, not HIIT. HIIT is working in very high intensities. This is just higher intensity training. done in shorter intervals, and then have other times in your training program where you're doing more steady state cardio. The combination of steady state cardio with higher intensity intervals improves VO2 max better than either one of those approaches on their own. So what does steady state look like? Well, simply, we can get very technical and in the weeds, but very simply, jog or run the best distance you can in 30 minutes, get on a stair climber or elliptical, and do as much as you can in 30 minutes. As you improve, as 30 minutes gets easy, you can go to 35 or to 40. This probably should be a bigger chunk of your training, but that steady state is important. It builds your base. Then the intervals, whereas HIIT training, high intensity cardio training, your work intervals are very, very short, but very, very intense. They're usually like 20 or 30 seconds, 40 seconds max with an all-out effort. That is not for VO2 max. VO2 max is improved by working hard, pushing as hard as you can on some piece of cardio equipment like an air bike or something, a stair climber, for like a 5-minute interval. So that's going to be a much lower intensity than you could do for 30 seconds, obviously, but much higher intensity than you could do for 30 minutes. So you'd work at a higher intensity for somewhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and then recover at a low intensity for something like 2 minutes. And then again for 3 to 5 minutes, and you could do between 5 and 10 rounds of that. And that can be done maybe once a week, even once every 10 days or so. Higher intensity work is a little harder to recover from, so you want to make sure that you're recovering adequately. But if you get consistent about even just one day a week doing some steady state, maybe a 30 minutes or so run, elliptical, bike, something of that sort, and then maybe twice a month or 3 times a month doing a higher intensity 5-minute type of thing, you should find that your VO2 max improves. So how do we measure VO2 max? Well, you can find some inaccurate, some sort of estimate type equations that you can find online. They take into account how quickly you can run a mile, or how fast you can do X number of flights on a stair climber, and they take your age into account, some other factors, and they have an algorithm and will estimate your VO2 max. The only way to really know is to have it tested, and you have it tested by taking a metabolic active or resting, an active metabolic assessment, where you would be working on some piece of equipment, treadmill, bike, stair climber, wearing a mask with tubes that measure the gases you exhale and can measure at what levels you're using oxygen for energy versus when you become anaerobic and you're no longer using oxygen. So anyway, improving your VO2 max will absolutely increase your odds of living longer, healthier. And if you take those longer years, healthier years, and you fill them with things like mindfulness and healthy relationships and meaning making, you can really start to approach what I like to call thriving. So try it out, work on your VO2 max. If you're able to, get it tested. The American Heart Association recommends that all adults have their VO2 max tested annually. If you don't do it annually, at least find a place to get it tested once and see where you are. Try to elevate it and see if you don't feel better generally. I can assure you that it will improve your overall health and reduce your risk of all-cause mortality. So until next time, it's Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, the Biker Psychologist, saying, just keep growing until you're thriving. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.